Hello, sports history fans. I'm Harv Aronson from the Total Sports Recall podcast. You're about to jump into another thrilling sports history moment, but first let's dive into today's sponsor just in time for the holiday season. Introducing Art of Words, the brainchild of word artist Dan Duffy from Philadelphia. Dan meticulously crafts stunning images by handwriting relevant words from some of the greatest sports moments in time. These unique, budget-friendly illustrations are the perfect gift, sparking cherished memories and capturing hearts. Choose from city skylines, sports, history, and musicians to find a piece for everyone. And here's the exciting part. For that sports fanatic in your life, gift them a piece of their favorite team or player's history. Art of Words tells a compelling story. Explore collegiate stadiums, each meticulously crafted with every football victory etched in words. Or venture into baseball stadiums, handwritten with every player from the team's illustrious history. Don't wait. Order a print today for yourself and your loved ones this holiday season. Transform your wall into a gallery of captivating art and surprise your family and friends with a print of their own. Use code SHN15 at artofwords.com for a 15% discount on your order in November and December. Visit Art of Words, where words magically transform into stunning art, evoking cherished memories and touching the hearts of those you care about. Again, use the code SHN15 for a 15% off at artofwords.com.
This is Tim McCoy, Executive Director of Pennsylvania West Soccer Association. You're listening to the Total Sports Recall podcast, a part of the Sports History Network. Now, here's your host, Harv Aronson.
I'm your host, Harv Aronson, and for this episode, we might have what might be the most interesting and intriguing guest to date. Joining me is Kent Washington, who became the first Black American to play professional basketball behind what was known as the Iron Curtain, signing on with a team in Poland. Washington has written a book on his experience, which is available, entitled Kentomania, a Black Basketball Virtuoso in Communist Poland. Kent Washington carries the attitude of won't be denied, and with that, he took basketball to a level few others could. He was born in New Rochelle, New York on January 10th, 1955, and he's the son of Ralph and Clotilde Washington with an older brother, Kurt. Kent attended the New Rochelle public schools, where he trained relentlessly while cultivating his basketball skills. Through hard work and discipline, Kent's high school basketball accolades resulted in a 4-year scholarship to Southampton College. His basketball prowess drew much attention as his personal achievements continued to grow. On January 4th, 1979, Kent committed to play professional basketball in Poland. For the next 4.5 seasons, he would be a star player there, living amongst the communist lifestyle the country ruled under while assimilating into Polish society. Ken, I'm honored and privileged to have you on Total Sports Recall, and you have quite the story to tell.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope the listeners enjoy it.
Yeah, and before we get into the nitty-gritty of your story, I would like to give our listeners a brief history lesson just to set the stage for your experiences overseas. While you were in Poland, the president of the country, which was then known as the People's Republic of Poland, was Henry Jablonski. During that time, you were there in Poland was under the Marxist-Leninist regime. The state of the country was under the Stalinist repression, social unrest, political strife, and was experiencing severe economic difficulties. Martial law was declared in 1981 while you were there after General Wojciech Jaruzelski, who led the People's Republic military side, declared that Poland was on the verge of economic and civil breakdown and warned of Soviet intervention. The Free Labor Union suspended most of its leaders, and thousands of citizens were detained, interned, or imprisoned. Communism would eventually crumble in 1989. But I must ask you, given those conditions, Kent, you made it through, but did so becoming a major star athlete in Poland, plus the term Kentomania. How did you do it?
That's a great question. It was very difficult times, but I was there to play basketball. and that was my one passion, my obsession, and I was there to really athletically try to lift our team up to the playoffs. The daily situation around me was significant. However, I am a person that is able to endure difficulties. I didn't see it as that kind of challenge because as long as I could play the sport, I was totally happy. I was in bliss. So it was very difficult times. However, basketball served as an outlet, which it has my entire life. And to know me as a youth, you would understand that I live in a world of basketball like solitude. When I'm playing, when I'm practicing, I'm in my own world. So that was my savior there. So I could endure the communist lifestyle.
Mm. And I also read about during that martial law, soldiers would actually exit their tanks when they saw you just to get your autograph.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I was walking to practice on the first occasion, and there were tanks on the street, and I well knew that we could have the practice session. Games were actually postponed, and I'm walking to practice one day, and a couple of soldiers were yelling from the tanks, "Washington, Ken Washington, Koshakash," and I could speak Polish then. So I knew exactly what they were saying, and they come running over to me with pencil and the paper, and I'm signing autographs of the very people who were there to keep order. I didn't think much of it then because I signed so many autographs, but when I reflect on it, it was very interesting situation that I was that they saw me in that light.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I don't think too many athletes can really make that kind of claim. I mean, that's just a bizarre situation, but I think it's very interesting. So I read about the Polish movie Mies, which is regarded by some as one of the finest Polish films ever made, in which you made a brief appearance. In the scene I was able to find, and I watched it actually, an older couple's lying around watching television, a scene of what appears to be a member of Harlem Globetrotters putting on a dribbling exhibition while being guarded by an opponent. Then the old man jumps up and apparently proved to the woman he can dribble like that and takes off his robe. And all of a sudden, there you are in front of the bed putting on your own dribbling exhibition. And then it goes back to the old man putting his robe back on and they jump back in the bed. It was hilarious. Tell us, our listeners, about being in that movie for what was probably less than a minute.
Yeah, that was a weird thing. We got a call that to our club, to the president. He calls me into the office with my translator. And they're talking, and the translator turns to me and said, "You want to be in a movie?" I said, "What? A movie?" So I'm thinking it's got to be a comedy if they want me in it. What else would it be? So we drive to Warsaw, and I meet the director, and they describe the scene to me. I go up to a room, I put the robe on, and I do a lot of dribbling. I must have done about 2 minutes of dribbling. I was dribbling all over the walls, the bureau, the floor, everything. And they finally thanked me, and I went home. Unbeknown to me, years later, Mish, which means I think teddy bear, is one of the most popular cult comedies in the history of Polish cinema. And I'm thinking, what the heck? And I mean, what a great opportunity. My role was, I was playing the gentleman who got up he was bragging to his girlfriend that when he was young, he used to be black and play basketball. And she went, "Get out of here." So he stands up and he shows her. and that was the scene.
Oh, that's so funny. Because, when I found the clip on YouTube, of course, it's in Polish, so I couldn't understand it. There was no captions underneath. And so I kind of just had to watch the scene. But now you've set it up perfectly. And, oh, my God, that even makes it funnier. And I'll tell you, Ken, I've saved it. I'm going to save it. I've watched it 2 or 3 times already. It's funny. It's really funny. But let's go back to your younger days. In your youth, you began. What's that? Go ahead.
I've got my Southampton College jersey on in the scene.
I'm going to have to go back and look now because now I know something new about it. I'll have to take another look. Let's go back to your younger days. In your youth, you began with an obsession for playing hoops, and because of that, you were given a nickname Nut.
Yes. Yeah. So it started as like peanut because I was like really small. And then around the age of 13, 14, I began to get this itch I could not scratch. And I just wanted to improve playing basketball. And I was trying to figure out how to practice effectively. So I decided to practice full court alone. And that type of training enhanced my skills tremendously. And people began to say I'm nuts about basketball. So Nut kind of stuck. The obsession was I just set goals and I wanted to each year improve to the best of my talent. And it got worse in college. I became just a real obsessive fanatic practicing basketball. I loved to practice. I can't explain why. It's just this addiction I had. I could not sit still and just be idle. I had to go out and work on my game. I wouldn't suggest it to anyone else. When I talk to kids, I tell them that this path is my path. Everybody else has their own path because mine was really unhealthy at times.
Well, when you love a sport that much, that's what you do. I had a guest on recently. He was a big basketball fan. We talked a lot about basketball, and I told him, I play a lot of amateur sports, all my life, and of all the sports I played, basketball was always my favorite. It's just such a great game. So I can definitely understand your obsession, especially when you've got the skills and you want to be better at it. So that I completely understand. You attended New Rochelle High School, where as a point guard, you were named to the All-Conference team as well as All-County. Those are some fine awards.
Yeah, when I was playing and practicing and striving, accolades come and they go. It's nothing I really tried to reach. I just wanted to get better every practice, every year. And when things started to happen, like all conference, all league, or a county, I was, wow, I guess I'm beginning to improve to a stature where others are actually recognizing me now. Looking back, very proud of it. But at that time, I was just, practicing to get better each year.
Mm-hmm. Well, following high school, you received a scholarship to play college ball at Southampton College, NCAA Division II. For your career, you scored 1,082 points while at Southampton in 1976. Your team was invited to play in a tournament in Poland that included a team from Poland, Start Lublin. It was a 14-day trip where you played in 7 games, and impressively, you were named the tournament most valuable player and played so well you caught the eye of the Polish team's head coach. And forgive me if I mispronounce his name, but Zdzislaw Niedziela, something, and he welcomed you to come back and play in Poland. And what are your most vivid memories of that 14-day excursion and playing ball overseas?
Yeah, wow, there are so many. The first and fourth, the first thing was that my imaginative style of play intrigued the Polish basketball fan. And I was unaware that just my skill set, which I took for granted, would be something that people admired so much. And after our first game there, I was mobbed by the fans, and we had a translator, and she told me that the journalists, they want to know how you play like that. Like, how does that happen? How do you dribble? How do you pass like that? And I told them, I just practice a lot. So that really stood out. And then each game, there was more fanfare. There was more newspaper coverage. And she began to have like press conferences with me because the journalists were so overwhelmed of this style. And I got the most valuable player and trainer, Zdzislaw Niedziela. He was the coach of Stark Lublin then, and he spoke with the translator and told me if I ever wanted to come back, I could play for them. And I had no thoughts of playing basketball in Poland at that time. You know, I'm a college kid. You know, I got a year left. I had a couple of teammates that were older who played in Sweden. So I thought maybe if I'm that good, maybe Swedish door could maybe open up because they knew me. But so it was mainly the basketball. But the lifestyle I saw there was very interesting. Although we stayed in hotels, my teammates and I there, we saw things like we were in the locker rooms, and instead of toilet paper, they had ripped up newspaper.
Oh my gosh!
The locker rooms were, the locker rooms, there were no real toilets. You had to stand on a this porcelain, like 2 footprints and a hole in the ground that you had to go to the bathroom. It was just a different life, and I didn't think much of it because we were only there for 2 weeks. But when I went back, it was now my life.
Yeah. Wow. Well, following college in 1977, you were invited to a Los Angeles Lakers pre-camp for which you had received airplane fare, hotel accommodations, paid for by the Lakers. You did not make it to Lakers camp that summer, but you had been told you would be drafted by Los Angeles. That year, NBA veteran Ernie DeGregorio was traded to the Lakers. Did you get to meet Ernie, and what can you recall from that pre-camp?
Yeah, no, so the camp then is not like the summer league is now. The summer league are different franchises send teams there to play against each other. Back then, there were agents who would pay for their players to participate in a Southern California summer pro camp. So there were 16 teams, and the people, there were a lot of ex-ABA players whose teams went bankrupt. So they had to kind of restart. There was a lot of those guys. There were a lot of guys just trying to make a team. I fortunately had my fees paid for, but it was 16 teams. You played, and there were a lot of scouts there. The international scouts NBA scouts from all of the different,
Wow.
like the franchises. So it was interesting to be a part of. I actually saw how good is, and I just wasn't good enough. I played well there, but in order to make either the Laker camp or in another camp, you had to pretty much already have a name or absolutely dominate. So it was a good experience knowing that I'm not on that level,
Yeah.
you know.
And I
So
appreciate you
I
sharing
had
with those.
another.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my next goal after was leaving there, thinking I got to get better.
Yeah, I guess when you're around really good players like that, it would make you motivated to do that. I thank you for sharing those rosters with me. I looked at those over last night, and there were a few names on there I recognized. So, and it was amazing. It's 16 teams all in that camp. And so, did you get a chance to meet Ernie?
Never, no, because you would.
Yeah.
I would have to have gotten to the Laker camp.
I got
and
you.
I got cut before that. So Norm Nixon, Brad Davis, and Ernie D were the 3 point guards there. So, I mean, I knew going out, I'm not making the Lakers. I just wanted to see how good is. Because being a D2 player, you never get to really play against a lot of D1 teams. Although back then at Southampton, we did play against LIU, Hofstra, because there were so few D1 teams back then that D1 teams had to play several D2 teams each season.
Wow.
They just had to.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of D1 teams back then.
Uh-huh. And it's interesting you mentioned Norm Nixon because me being from Pittsburgh, born and raised, Norm went to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. So that name rings a bell.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable player.
Oh, yeah, he was a very, very, very excellent player. So not making it into the NBA, you were offered a contract to play in Poland, and you did light it up over there. In 4.5 years there, you averaged 20 points per game. You were named the league MVP once, and on another occasion were the most valuable player runner-up. You set a record for three-pointers, hitting 10 in one game, later breaking the record with 12. One of your teams, Zagłębia, won the coveted Polish Cup in 1983, which turns out that's the only title that team ever won in their history. This is compared to Team Śląsk Wrocław, I think how you pronounce it, has won it the most 14 times. Is this the basis of what made you so popular in Poland?
Yeah. One correction there. The 10 3-pointers came in Sweden.
Okay.
During that time, there was no 3-point line. That comes after. But my playing with Start Lublin, I got the we got the bronze medal twice, and I was that's where the real hoopla started because fans there had never seen a American, I guess, Black American basketball player with my skill set. So quickly, according to my translator who spoke to a journalist and they talked for a long time, Kentomania started. And what Kentomania exactly meant was my presence in Polish basketball started this incredible popularity of the sport. Every city we went to, there were lines of people waiting to get like tickets. It was packed arenas. It was insane. Now, I didn't really realize this because I'm just playing. I thought they always get packed arenas. I don't know that this is me. Our first scrimmage game, we had a scrimmage game. Our arena sits 1,600. There were over 3,000 people at the first Rumor game, and
Wow.
3,000 people couldn't get in. It was insane. So I don't know what's going on here. They're scalping tickets now. There's people coming from all kinds of different townships to watch this phenom, which they think is Kent Washington play. So all this is being told to me. And I'm there going, what? Like, what are you talking about? I'm just playing basketball here. So it begins to get to a point where we are averaging over 3,500 people a game in a hall that can't hold it. It was insane. And in every city, Warsaw, Krakow, I mean, there's just lines of people, dozens of people, and so I'm living this life of, they think I'm something that I'm not kind of pretending to be. So it's overwhelming.
So was the Kentomania thing a chant as well, or just that's how you were known? Did they chant it in the stands?
Yeah, no. They would chant Washington.
Okay.
Washington.
Wow.
So I would go to games that were away, and as a guest team, we would steal their crowd. They were chanting Washington instead of cheering for their own team. It was so weird. And then after games, I was just mobbed by people signing autographs, touching my skin, touching my hair. It was
crazy.
It was just unreal. It was unreal. But in a fun way, there were times where I couldn't even get out of the gym. Couldn't get out,
I'm you must have got like chills up your spine when that happened. I mean, that's exciting. I mean, you should be proud of that. But I'm kind of more amazed that, I grew up in that area. It's kind of amazing that you didn't get more attention over here about what you were doing. I mean, it's bizarre that this is the first I've heard your story, and it's just amazing that story hasn't gotten out there earlier.
It's interesting. When I came back each summer, I would come back and play in, the Rucker tournament here, the big tournaments here, well, with the pros. I had a double standard like life. I was a good point guard here, but there I was a star. And I used to keep these two lives totally separate. And my teammates here, my friends here had no idea of the impact I had there. And I never talked about it because I realized that I have friends, Gus Williams, Ray Williams, Earl Tatum, all of these guys who play pro basketball. I'm not on their level. I'm a second-class citizen. So I keep my head down, my mouth shut, and just play here. Well, when I'm there, I have to score more, and my natural play is just different. So I was able to keep these two lives totally separate. And I didn't realize that I had this impact or that this story was historical until the year 2019, where a Polish journalist calls me up and she interviews me on the 40th anniversary of me being there. And she tells me that I don't realize the legendary status that I still hold in Poland. And I'm listening going, what are you talking about? I was just playing basketball. She said, Kent, you have no idea that people there know you from not only basketball, but the film Mish. And everybody wants to know what you're doing now. They adore you there. So I'm thinking, and she said, you should write a memoir because people here want to hear about your story. That's the reason I wrote it because people here don't know me from a hole in the wall. My story has no significance here. It's Cold War experts call me constantly about they can't believe that I could live there and travel back and forth for 5 years without ever being hassled. So I get calls from Slavic studies people, academics, Cold War experts, all of these people trying to figure out what I saw back there, how I was actually treated, and all of these things. But the sports person like ESPN and all of these, Cold War experts have told me that my story could be more significant than Jackie Robinson's, simply because I endured a communist lifestyle. Jackie lived here. He didn't have any social change. He just dealt with racism. I dealt with all of those factors there. There were no blacks in Poland, and it was a communist lifestyle. So I laugh at it and go, what are you talking about? Jackie Robinson's probably one of the most popular human beings in America. Yeah, but Ken, your story is international. His story's not. So I struggle with this constantly, but again, I have that second-class citizen mentality that I'm not an NBA player and I'm not a national, my story's not on that national level, but people keep telling me it is. But, I can't get it out there, so.
Well, I disagree with that. You are in a special category here, and just still, I can't wrap my head around the fact that you didn't get more media attention from this. I guess it's better late than never when it happened in 2019, but it should have happened way earlier than that. And I think I understood too that I heard that ESPN didn't want to do your story, which is shame on them because they have that 30 on 30 show, and you have this perfect story for that kind of show. Absolutely.
Well, I can't. So here's the story there. I have emailed them several times, but either my email goes to spam or whoever reads it, and I don't know who is, doesn't think the story has any significance. I mean, these are things I can't control, or I don't know who to contact, or somebody with a bigger voice than mine must contact them on my behalf. That's what it comes down to. I'll tell you what.
I'm going to get together with the Sports History Network people and the Millions.co who we're trying to join forces with, and we're going to work on this because this story needs to be told in a bigger way. There is no doubt about it, and it's a shame that it hasn't been told. So I'm going to help you out, Ken. I'm going to see what I can do for you with my network and this other partner that we're trying to partner up with, and we'll get it out there because this is a great story, and I can't believe that ESPN wouldn't put it on 30 on 30.
I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So while you never played in the NBA, you did get the opportunity to play against the likes of Gus and Ray Williams, Spud Webb, Tiny Archibald, Detlef Schrempf, and Arvydas Sabonis. What were those experiences like? Those are some great players there.
Yeah. Well, Nate Archibald, I played against him in the New York, the Pro-Ams here. And actually, Nate had Nancy Lieberman on his team then. So
kidding.
I got to play against her too. Yeah. I got a picture of it also. Gus and Ray, that was summer basketball. Gus was mainly summer basketball. Ray I played against during high school. He's the same age as I am. Detlef Schrempf, Arvydas Sabonis, and people like Drazen Petrovic, those people I played against when I was in Poland.
Wow.
We played the Russian national team in a West German international tournament. Detlef Schrempf, he was 18, 19. I think he was just entering Washington State. I played against him. Drazen Petrovic, when we toured Yugoslavia with my the Polish team, we played against him and a bunch of great Yugoslavian players. They are unreal. We played against them. He played on a team called Sabenka, and we played them too. So I saw how good the European player was in 1980, and I knew someday they would be here. They were that good. They just weren't allowed to come over here. Sabonis was unreal. I mean, he was unreal. And there were his whole team could have came over to the NBA. They were great players. I mean, great players. I saw that.
Yeah, I'm going to touch a little bit on that in a little bit, but I read a quote from you that has you saying at one time, unequivocally, if I had a choice to be on the New York Knicks or to have done what I did, I would do what I did. I would have no guarantee of playing time in the NBA, and I hated sitting, and I did something historical no other American or Black American did. Do you still hold that same sentiment, or are there any regrets of not having made it in the NBA?
Knowing what I know now, I have no regrets at all. I did something that no one else did. I mean, nobody may care, but it still remains that I'm the first. And knowing that and knowing how I love practicing and love the game, I would have been miserable sitting on an NBA bench. Absolutely. Because I have friends who have done that. Great basketball players. I won't name any names, but these guys were great players. They made it. They sat. They got waived, and they may have been in the league for like 2 years. I played 15 seasons, 5 in Poland and 10 in Sweden. And on top of all that, I'm recognized now as kind of helping, I guess, globalize the basketball behind the Iron Curtain. So I would never trade that in for anything.
Yeah, and knowing what I know now from what you've told me so far in this podcast, if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't trade it for anything either. I mean, your experience was amazing. What you went through, the hero you became in Poland, who would trade that for sitting on a bench in the NBA? I definitely agree with you on your sentiment there. On a personal level, Kent, you met your wife, Suzanne, in Sweden, and two of you had a daughter, Kelly, who was a standout softball player at Rider University and then for the Swedish national team. I believe Kelly's living in the Netherlands, which is what you told me you were departing for November 28th. So you as an athlete, your daughter is an athlete. And did Suzanne compete in any sports?
She was a recreational athlete. Good genes.
That's the daughter, right?
No. My wife just played like recreational basketball.
I got you. So being in Poland, Kent, you learned how to speak some Polish, and then in Sweden, some Swedish. That's pretty impressive. Not many people can speak multiple languages. How about giving our listeners a little taste of both languages by saying anything you'd like? And speaking of taste, I understand one of your favorite Polish foods while there was something called shabawi, which is something like pork.
Szapkowy, yeah. So, jak se masz is how are you in Polish. And I speak a little now in Swedish. It's hur mår du? That's the same thing. I'm fluent in Swedish. I could speak Polish back then, but my grammar was horrible. But I could speak. Swedish, I speak grammatically well because I actually spent 10 years there, so it's a whole different, and I also studied there too. So my Swedish is much better. I have a Swedish passport too.
Oh, awesome. And you're going to be going to the Netherlands on the 28th, I understand, right?
Oh, yes.
And that's for
I'll
a
be
visit?
back and forth, but yeah.
Okay.
We just bought a home there, so we'll be going back and forth.
Well, I've heard great things about Sweden and Netherlands, how beautiful those two countries are. So, unfortunately, I've never had a chance to experience that. But yes, they're pretty countries, aren't they?
Very.
Well, here's another incident I read about which happened to you during a game in Poland. Some might think this was offensive, maybe racist, and personally, I found it both definitely offensive. But during a game in Poland, the fans were chanting "Kunta Kinte" in reference to a character in the famous movie Roots, which evolves around the story of slavery. I understand you took this lightheartedly and believed it was intended to be more in jest and fun, but I think in this country it would not go over well, especially these days. Give our listeners a little background on that incident.
Yeah. So
I'm glad you can laugh about
we're
it.
Playing it. You had to be there. It's one of those stories. So we're playing at Legia Warszawa, and they're known to have crazy soccer fans. So their fans have a soccer mentality, but they're indoor, as basketball fans. And they're chanting, and there's all kind of chants that are associated with sports there. And they're chanting, and it's going on. We're in the layup line. And then all of a sudden, I hear, Kunta Kinte, Kunta Kinte. And I'm dribbling the ball, and I'm laying it up. And I'm thinking to myself, are they saying what I think they're saying? So my teammates are like looking at me like, I guess they realized too, like what we're chanting. So I just told myself that, okay, I'm going to give them a basketball experience they will never forget. They have never seen anything like what I'm going to deal out today. After the game, they came pouring out of the stands, hugging me, kissing me, wanting autographs. Wow. So that's when I knew that they're just trying to get my goat, kind of harassingly in a fun way. I never took it racially because of the reaction after. If they were spitting or saying things or throwing things, that's different. But after that game, racist people don't run at you and want to hug you,
Right, exactly. And was that the only time that ever happened?
That was the only time. I mean, what people said. I asked my translator this September. I went back to Poland for the first time in like 40 years. So I met my first translator, and I asked him, how much racism did you hear? He said a little, things that were said kind of quietly, but nothing really significant because I didn't feel any either. I lived there and I never felt any kind of racial prejudice at all. There was a drunk here, a drunk there, but they're drunks, So I never felt anything like that. But what's said behind one's back, one never knows. But the overt showing of kindness, and I mean, after every game, no matter where what city we were in. They would come all out of the stands, start wanting autographs, touching me, kissing me. I mean, it was just throwing me up and down. It was just insane.
Wow. So how many thousands of autographs you think you signed over the years?
I'm just thankful there were no cell phones for selfies.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Yeah. But you must have signed thousands and thousands of autographs over those years, huh?
Thousands of autographs. I mean, I never left games where I didn't kind of finish signing, because I always felt that tickets were so hard to get. I read articles, I didn't read, but I was told that tickets were the most difficult thing to get in Poland was a Start Lublin basketball ticket. Now, I don't know how true, but I was told that it was the most difficult ticket to get. When I played, I wanted to always make sure that I gave the fan something special, because it could have been their first time and their only time ever watching me play. So I took that very, very, very seriously. And one of the journalists wrote something that was pretty cool. It said, when watching Kent play, don't blink, because you might miss something.
Wow. That's interesting. It sounds to me like the people of Poland were very kind and very good to you while you were there. That's the impression I'm getting.
Yeah. This is the reason I wrote the book. I wanted the people of Poland to understand my feelings toward them during that time. I also wanted Americans here to get a different perception of what communism is, but what Polish people are. Because communism shouldn't be an indictment on the people that live there.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, another question I have about your families. I read your father was an amateur boxer, and I'm a huge boxing fan. And he had a bout with a legendary Sugar Ray Robinson. And as a big boxing fan, that was remarkably interesting to me. And I'd like to hear a little bit about that. And I'm sure my listeners would as well.
Yeah, well, that story's kind of vague, because I was just I wasn't born. I was going through my father's things one day, and he was in his late 60s, and I saw these boxing, like the photographs. And I said, Daddy, you box? He said, yeah. Yeah, I was amateur. He boxed amateurly, and he boxed in the Army too. So he said he had an amateur bout against Sugar Ray Robinson. I went, what? He said, well, don't get too excited. He beat me pretty good. But the fact that you were in the room with Sugar Ray Robinson is unreal. So my father is very humble, very modest. That gene fell in to me as well. He doesn't brag about things. He doesn't really kind of talk. If I didn't see those boxing pictures, I would have never known. He's sure. Like that kind of guy, So he's always kind of instilled in me. First impressions are very important. He used to tell me, "Don't blow your own horn. Let somebody else do it for you."
Sure. Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves about professional athletes is when they get too big for their britches and they start boasting and bragging and showing off and clowning around. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm all for the more modest players that just go out and perform and act professionally. So, yeah, that's a big plus for athletes. Recently, Ken, I had a guest on who is also a big NBA fan. I asked him the same question I'm about to ask you. With so many Europeans playing in the NBA over the years, I get the impression that European players are so good because they play with the fundamentals of basketball, such as dribbling, passing, and teamwork. And that does not seem to be so much the case in the NBA, especially these days. And with the World Basketball Championships held this year, the United States not only lost to Canada, they failed to medal. What is your opinion of whether or not American players have lost focus on basketball fundamentals, where seems European players focus highly on those skills?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I saw this coming 40 years ago. I realized that when I was practicing in Poland, we practiced totally differently. Um, Everybody is a ball handler. Everybody goes through certain skills. Everybody gets to shoot outside shots. So they kind of train you as a basketball player first. Then your growth kind of determines where you are on the court. So if you are a ball handler at the age of 12, 13, and you're 6'2", then you're in a guard spot. That same kid who was 6'2" may grow to be 6'9". He can handle the ball just as well as the 6'2" kid. He's just in a more forwardy spot. So, and then they got guys that are like 7'1" that handle the ball like that too. They're just in the so-called center spot. So I saw this coming when I got to when my Southampton team played our first game. We were overwhelmed by how good they passed and moved. Overwhelmed. We could not guard them, and they do not miss shots. They can pick and pop. I never seen that. We pick and rolled here. They pick and pop. So their centers and their forwards would screen and then pop out. And our guys would roll in to guard them. They weren't there. They were shooting 18-footers. They did the dribble handoff. I never saw that before.
Wow.
We never did that here. So that was new. They had that Euro step there. That was killing us as the college players because we were trying to take charges and they were just stepping around us, laying the ball in. So there were all of these ways that they played. I'll tell you, Poland taught me more about basketball than I could ever teach them. I learned a whole new way of playing ball. The ball moves, the body moves. Don't dribble the ball unless you have to. And I never had that here because as a point guard, I dribbled too much. But there, I didn't need to. Everybody could handle the ball. So I saw two Polish players who I thought then could easily play here. I saw the Russian, the national team, and think back then, that was one country. That was Russia. Russia is now about 6 countries with 6 different like national teams. They had one 15-man roster back then. You know how good you had to be to make the Russian national team? I mean, it was insane. The Yugoslavian national team, they were unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. So I saw how they trained players. The big men had such skill. It was great passers, ball handlers. Like Jokic is really, really good. Don't get me wrong. He's special. But there were lots of Jokic's like that type back then that never got here because they weren't allowed to come here. They just weren't allowed.
Yeah.
And that their skill set was never featured here. They were seen as complementary players. It's only now where they're being featured. If they were featured 15 years ago, a lot of other players would have stood out. But they came here as complementary kind of, let's see if they can take the NBA style of play. They were never featured. They're becoming featured players now. That's what changed too.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that you think the Americans are going to learn from their style of play and alter their style of play. And they're bringing so many Europeans over. They're playing their style of ball, and our Americans are playing our style of ball. And I think it's kind of crazy anyway because it's our sport. We created it, and I actually think they're better players now than we are.
Well, here's what's going on too. They practice skills. Our players here, AAU games, we play games, we don't practice anymore. You know, you got AAU teams who practice once a week and play 6 games during the weekend. Over there, they're busy practicing at 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. They're practicing skill. The better players, the really top players, get to play with the elite level. So you'll have guys who are 16, 17 playing with men for 2 years. That's what really grooms them.
Wow.
But we play too many games here because college coaches want to scout people's kids. So people put their kids in all of these AAU teams. They don't practice. They just play.
Wow.
Over there, they practice first. Playing comes second.
Wow. Was it Allen Iverson, I think, used to say, I don't like to practice? I think it was Allen that said that. AI used to say, I don't like to practice. That doesn't make any sense. Practice makes perfect. Isn't that what they say?
It could.
Yeah. So I understand you coached the women's basketball team in Iona Mercy and were a teacher's assistant in Washington Irving School.
Yeah. Yeah. I found out I'm a terrible coach. So that was kind of short-lived. But I did like teaching 3rd grade math. That was my passion, trying to figure out how to simplify math so 3rd graders could actually get it. Coaching, not my thing. I like assistant coaching because I like skill training. I don't like to be responsible for wins and losses.
So how did the women's basketball team fare while you were a coach? They do well?
They were terrible. College sports is based on how good you can recruit more than how good you can coach.
Interesting. Well, 2002, Kent, you were inducted into the New Rochelle Sports Hall of Fame, so I congratulate you on that. But this is your opportunity now to tell my listeners about your book, Kentomania, A Black Basketball Virtuoso in Communist Poland. Let us know more about the book, where it can be purchased, and fill us in with what you are doing these days, any projects you might be involved in. Are you on social media? Somewhere fans can reach out to you.
Okay. Got my book, Kentomania, A Black Basketball Virtuoso in Communist Poland, is available on Amazon Books. The book is also translated into the Polish language, and it's available in Poland at my old Start Lublin club. I do podcasts occasionally when I'm given the opportunity. My book mostly appeals to the academic world because of the unique characteristic of the communist culture. I do book talks occasionally. Unfortunately, don't get a lot of people there. So I'm just trying to figure out a way how to get the story out to a larger audience that likes sports, maybe like history as well. I'm not very technologically capable of things, so I don't have Instagram accounts and things like that, which doesn't help my book sale, because nowadays you have to be a self promoter, and I'm horrible at that because of my father's gave me this humble gene where you're not supposed to self promote. So that's difficult for me. But I figure sooner or later the book may catch fire at some point where somebody reads it and says, wow, this is some book. The ratings and the reviews on Amazon have been very positive, so I can point to that. And I think that if one reads the book, it is a character journey of me with basketball as a backdrop. That's what it is.
Well, with Sports History Network, and I know tomorrow for our listeners as well, you're going to be interviewed again on Sports History Network on a podcast called Basketball History 101. Rick Loaiza is the host of that show, so you'll be on there again tomorrow, so hopefully he'll be able to help you as well. But we'll do our part here to get your book out there, because your story is great, and I think it needs to be more publicized and put out there for people to know what you accomplished. So that leads me to my final question, which would be, I understand you have not been back to Poland since your playing days ended there. Any plans to return to Poland?
I was back last September. So
okay.
I spent 1 week there last September with my wife, and the club invited me back, and they hired a videographer full-time
wow.
that followed us around. It was the most amazing, tearful time in my life. My wife could not believe the amount of people who stopped us on the street, who came up to us and thanked me for playing basketball there. And then I'm thinking, I should be thanking you for allowing me to play basketball here.
Yeah.
So there is, I'm going to send it to you, the link. And you want to see it?
I absolutely do. And I'm telling you what, you send me that link and it will be on my YouTube channel. I guarantee you that. If you send it to me, I'll put it up.
Oh, okay. So it's a 6-minute video of me coming back to my hometown of Lublin. And it was tearful, emotional, to realize that grandchildren of people knew me. It was just insane. So,
see, and that's what makes me shake my head, Kent. The fact that your story is not out there. I can't believe it. I mean, ESPN really should be ashamed of themselves for not putting your story out there. I can tell you, I do have some media contacts. I'm going to reach out to these friends of mine. He may have contacts at ESPN, because they absolutely should have a 30-on-30 show with your story.
I appreciate it. I mean, there's a Dutch film company at this very time that's researching seriously to do a doc. They just haven't come up with the investors yet. They're looking at Adidas, because I wore Adidas there, so that they wanted to kind of market it as the first American to globalize the basketball in a communist country wore Adidas. So they're looking at that, but it's coming from a Dutch company with a Polish production manager, because she gets it.
Yeah.
She gets it.
Hey, well, look, Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee got his start in Hong Kong doing movies and became such a star over there. He was able to make it over here. So no reason why your story can't make it over here. I seriously I'm shaking my head because I just can't wrap my head around the fact that nothing's been done with it over here. I mean, and on my whatever I can do, I'm going to try to help you get there because I just think it's a shame that this story is not being told. It's a fantastic story.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. My book is in the Duke Library. So a Duke librarian contacted me. So
wow.
He's got the book there because I wrote to Mike Krzyzewski since he's Polish.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to read a book about, he never contacted me back, but that's another story.
Are you serious? Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, because since his parents are Polish, I figured maybe, and one of his guards, Wojciechowski, who played for him, played ball there too. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to tell him how I started the whole thing, but he never wrote me back. So anyway, the Duke librarian gave me the email for a historian who works at the NBA because the Duke librarian thought that my story should be in the Hall of Fame in the NBA for globalizing basketball. So
absolutely should. I agree.
It's so weird. So anyway, that's life. Well, I'll deal with it, but I appreciate you, Harv, so much for helping me out here.
No, when I started to read your story, I told my wife, I said, this is I'm looking forward to this interview more than anyone I've done so far because the story is so great. It's so intriguing. And it's been a real joy to have you on. And now that I hear more, it only makes me want to help you more because I think it's a shame that this story is not out there. It's a great story. And I just still, again, can't wrap my head around that it's not getting the attention it deserves. Just the other thought I just had was, me being a big boxing fan, I was also started turning my attention to mixed martial arts, and they have several champions that are straight out of Poland. So it makes me wonder if they know who you are as well. There's one JJ, I can't pronounce her last name, but she was a strawweight. You may know who I'm talking about, and a couple of light heavyweights were champions. So I bet you they know who you are.
Every Polish person has seen Mish. They'll know me through that.
There you go. Well, I'm going to let you have the final word, Kent. Anything you want to tell our listeners or add on before we close up the show?
I appreciate this opportunity. I'm torn because when I wrote the book, I never imagined that my story could be of this magnitude for the Polish people. I'm happy I did that, and now I'm torn with I want more people to read it because I think it's worthy of some more recognition. But that gene I have of they're still thinking I'm a second-class citizen dominates me, and I just don't know how to go about it. Writing the book was extremely difficult because when I had to write about braggadocious things, it was very difficult because I'm not that guy. So I had to write it as though I'm looking down at my life, and it's not really me. It's somebody else. I had such a hard time, and when I wrote, I told my wife, "Please read it, Sue. Does this sound like I'm bragging?" It's like she said, "Kenny, write what's true." Right? It's so difficult.
No, that's far from bragging. It's a story that needs to be told. And hopefully this will be the start of something bigger. And if ESPN ever grabs onto your story and makes a documentary out of it, Kent, be proud of it because it's well deserved.
I appreciate it.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation with Kent Washington. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll do that after. So it's been a fascinating conversation with Kent Washington, a trendsetter at one time for basketball in Europe, who has a fine book out there. So I encourage everyone to grab a copy. It's been an honor and privilege to have Kent on Total Sports Recall. So for Kent Washington, this is your host, Harv Aronson, letting you know that if you have any comments about this show or suggestions for Total Sports Recall, they can be addressed to the show email at totalsportsrecall@gmail.com. You can reach out to me on Twitter using my handle at TSRHarv59, and be sure to visit both my website at www.totalsportsrecall.com and the YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@totalsportsrecall59. For Kent Washington, this is Harv Aronson wishing everyone a great week.
The contents of this podcast do not represent the opinions of others and are solely the opinions of Harv Aronson based on his experience, knowledge, and research.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Hello, football friends. This is Darren Hayes of the Pigskin Dispatch podcast, and I'd like to invite you to the portal of positive football history, Pigskin Dispatch and pigskindispatch.com. We talk about everything that centers around the game of American football, expert discussions, the origins of the games, the great players, teams, and coaches, and more, and some great guests and insights from experts. We have new episodes 3 to 4 times a week, and you can find us on sportshistorynetwork.com, pigskindispatch.com, or your favorite podcast provider.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcasts. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcasts. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.